Winter is coming. Sorry, folks, I just spent the last 3 weeks watching all 7 seasons of Game of Thrones, so I'm all caught up now, which means I understand all the memes. Great. That was my whole goal, right? I am the Mighty Plantain, and nonetheless, winter is coming. But in between winter and now, we have fall, which means fall beers. That being said, Samuel Adams Fall Variety Pack, the beers of fall. Some really great beers every year in this pack. I think I like the fall beers almost as much as I like the winter beers, and sometimes I get the winter beers and I think I like them almost as much as I do the fall beers. It's kind of a toss-up. Some nice, dark, comforting, warming beers. Usually a very good companion to a nice crisp fall day. These are beers you sit and drink around a nice fire out on the back lawn, or a campfire, or any kind of fire. So, that being said, I'm sure you all know what these fall beers are like, but there are a couple of new ones in this pack this year. We're going to check them out. What we've got is Boston Lager, Oktoberfest, of course, every fall pack. 20 pounds of pumpkin. Not necessarily my favorite pumpkin beer, but still a pretty solid offering. I honestly would rather see the Harvest Pumpkin Ale back in here, because I prefer that one. Maple Red. I'm not certain I've had that before. Black Lager, which I'm surprised. This is usually one I would associate with the winter beers. And then we've got the Honey Rye Pale Ale. Now, they don't have any of these marked as new varieties on here, so I'm not sure. The Maple Red and the Honey Rye Pale Ale aren't ringing any bells for me. I don't think I've had them before, but they aren't marked as new here, so they could be old beers that we've had before. So the order we're going to line these up in, I'm going to go with the Boston first, which is unusual. Usually I keep the Boston somewhere towards the middle, because it is a hoppier lager than what we're used to, but the overall flavor I don't think is going to be interfering with anything that I could have afterwards. So we're going to get the plain beer, as plain as it gets. I got my own opinion on the Boston Lager. I will talk about that in a minute. Pardon, but we're going to get the one without any really exotic or crazy flavors out of the way. Then I'm going to put the Maple Red, because that's going to be a red base, and it is probably going to have some sweetness to it, but nothing that's really going to be too heavy or dark. After that, the 20 pounds of pumpkin. I'm going to hit that one because of the overwhelming pumpkin taste in there. That's going to give it a lot more bold character and flavor. And then we're going to hit the Oktoberfest, which is a really nice, round, darker beer than you'd think. But it's kind of the middle of the road as far as I can tell with these guys. And then the Black Lager, of course, that's going to be number 5. And I'm finally going to finish it off with the Honey Rye Pale Ale. Now, it's a pale ale, and it's going after the darker beers, but that's because it's also the only one that specifically mentions being hoppy on the label, and based on the IBUs listed, it is the highest in IBUs. And granted, the Sammy Boston is at 30, and these guys are all in the teens until we get to the honey. But again, even though the Sammy Boston is in the 30 and it's higher IBUs than the others, I'm still putting it up the front, because even the little bit of hoppy bitterness that it has, I don't think is going to be overwhelming the flavors of these other beers, whereas I think the Honey Rye Pale Ale might, given the overall IBU on that and how it's mentioned specifically being hopped on the label. So, all that aside, let's get started with Sam Adams Boston Lager. Always a good decision. I can't argue with that. I think I got a halfway decent pour on that. So, no surprises. It is clear, not cloudy, fairly effervescent. Got a nice amber color to it, amber brown color. I love the look of this beer. No mysteries here if you've ever seen any of my videos before. It's got a nice balanced aroma. Some roastiness from the malt, just a little bit of hoppy bitterness, really well balanced. And it's delicious. I always rate this at a 5 out of 5 because for me, this is a perfectly well-rounded and balanced beer, and that's the wow factor for me. It's just really well put together. It's consistently good. It's delicious. I love it. Um, it's brewed using German purity, which is just hops, water, yeast, and malt, and consistently comes out. It just really well done. I love this beer. People will give you different opinions on it. They'll say it doesn't necessarily fit the style that it's brewed for, and you know what? They're probably right. But for me, just the fact that everything in this beer comes together to produce this perfectly balanced, lovely, flavorful experience that never gets dull. No matter what else I drink, I can always come back to this and know that I'm still going to enjoy it, and it doesn't pale in comparison to anything else out there. It always stands out and it's nice and bold. So that's why for me it's always a perfect 5 out of 5. Um, like I said, no mysteries. If you've ever watched any of my videos before, I've reviewed this beer many times on camera. So, yeah, I am going to finish up my Sammy Boston, and we'll come back for the next beer. Alright, so now we have the Maple Red. It just says here that it's rich and complex with maple sweetness. So what I'm anticipating is a traditional red ale with a little bit of sweetness and maple. Now that actually looks a little darker than most reds. It's got a red tinge to it. It's definitely a red, but it is darker than a lot of reds I've seen. Um, Decent head on it. Fairly clear. Pretty effervescent. There's a nice little string of bubbles coming up from that cavitation point on the bottom of the glass. But yeah, definitely darker than most reds I've seen. And just a little general graininess. Slight hint of maple coming through in the aroma. And maybe like a little bit of maple syrupy. It's got a nice medium mouthfeel. Up front is very much a nice red ale. Um, Now, Sam Adams, their traditional Irish red ale, is a lot more hoppy than this is. This is not very hoppy at all. It's all malt up front, a little roasty, a little toasty, slightly smoky. Definitely a campfire beer. But then in the finish, there's this slight bit of mapley sweetness that comes through. Um, yeah, reminds me of maybe like I don't know if you've ever been in a sugar house when they're boiling down the maple sap. There's that sweet mapley aroma in the air, and then that smell of wood smoke in a traditional sugar house that they use to boil down the sap. They're usually using a wood fire. Mm. It's very, very reminiscent of that because there's that toasty smokiness from the malt, and then that slight bit of mapley sweetness in the finish. It's very nice. Evokes a lot of imagery for me, just associating those particular aromas and that flavor in the air. Based on the taste alone, though, I've got to rate this a 3.5 out of 5. It's very nice, very well put together, but there's nothing really jumping out at me and making me say wow, or wanting to bump it up to a 4. Now, bear in mind, on a scale of 1 to 5, a 2.5 is average, so 3.5 puts this at a fairly above average beer. So it's definitely a good beer, a different experience, and something you should check out. I'm going to finish checking it out and move on to number 3. Alright, so we're up to beer number 3, which is 20 pounds of pumpkin. Now I mentioned before, Sam Adams 20 pounds of pumpkin is actually not one of my favorite pumpkin beers. I highly prefer their Harvest Pumpkin Ale. Matter of fact, I think that's probably number 1 on my pumpkin beer list, because I do like a good pumpkin beer. Dogfish Head's pumpkin, let's see, Saranac has their pumpkin ale, that's pretty decent. The local Maine brewery, Shipyard, they have Pumpkin Head, that's really good. What's the other one I was thinking? Pumpkin, I think that's Southern Tier. That's pretty decent too. So there's a lot of really good pumpkin beers out there. For me, again, the Sam Adams Harvest Pumpkin Ale is actually probably my number 1, and I do highly prefer it to the 20 pounds of pumpkin that we're looking at right here. I'll get to why in just a minute. So what we've got is we've got a really nice dark beer. I mean, this is almost looking like a porter even. Not quite, but it's a lot darker, a lot browner than I'm used to seeing in a pumpkin beer. It's got a great color. It's clear, not cloudy. Not very effervescent at all. There's a little bit of fall spices. Maybe like a cinnamon and maybe a little bit of nutmeg in there. Honestly, I'm not really sure, but it's just got that general fall spice, like allspice, if you know what that is, or Bell's seasoning. It's got a nice medium heavy mouthfeel, but it's all pumpkin. It's nothing but pumpkin in there. There's a little bit of fall spice coming through in the finish, but overwhelmingly pumpkin, and not like pumpkin pie pumpkin, like a sweet or sweet and spiced pumpkin. It's just a mouthful of pumpkin up front. It does fade to a bit of a fall spice aftertaste, but it's just overwhelmingly pumpkin. And like I said, I prefer the ones that are closer to like a pie pumpkin or a pumpkin pie overall flavor with a nice combination, like I mentioned, the Harvest Pumpkin Ale or the Shipyard Brewing's Pumpkin Head. Those two are honestly probably my top 2 pumpkin beers, followed closely by Dogfish Head's Pumpkin, which is really good. But again, this is just overwhelmingly pumpkin. And not much else. That hint of fall spices comes through in the finish, but it's just pumpkin beer. It's a mouthful of pumpkin. So it's not bad. It's not unpleasant. I don't dislike it, but I'm not crazy about it either. Which is why, and I might have rated this higher in the past, but this time I gotta hit it with a 2.5 out of 5, which is an average rating. I covered that scale before and mentioned that. And for me, it's good, and I don't dislike it, but I'm not crazy about it either. Just the fact that it's overwhelmingly pumpkin just turns me off, but I can't say that it's a bad beer because I do like it. I'm just not crazy about it. It's not one of my favorites. Definitely not my favorite pumpkin beer. Yeah, I'm definitely going to finish it. I do like it, like I said. So 2.5 out of 5 for me on the 20 pounds of pumpkin. I'm going to finish it up and move on to the 4th beer in the pack. Alright, now we come up to Sam Adams Oktoberfest. This is probably what this whole 12-pack is all about. Hearty and smooth Märzen. It is an Oktoberfest beer like no other. Dare I say, the quintessential Oktoberfest beer. Just like the Sam Adams Boston Lager serves as a yardstick to measure all other beers against, this actually serves as a yardstick to measure all other Oktoberfests against. For me, anyway. And that's just a personal opinion. Just like with the Boston Lager, other people might disagree. But this is a very nice, toasty brown beer. Slightly effervescent. I've managed to put a decent head on it, but there's not a lot of bubbles coming up through there. Clear as well. So far, we haven't had a single cloudy beer in this entire pack. Not that cloudy is bad. I've actually come to appreciate beers with more particulates in them recently. Toasty, fall spices. Nothing in particular jumping out in the aroma. It's an overall crisp, cool fall aroma. Actually got a nice medium light mouthfeel. Goes down very smooth, very easy, very toasty, smoky. Some fall spices in there. Just overall a nice roasty beer that goes well with a campfire, goes well with any kind of outdoorsy fire. Very reminiscent of the season, and this is a full-on 5 out of 5 for me. Again, just a great Oktoberfest. Probably still my favorite Oktoberfest. I haven't seen a beer with Oktoberfest on the label that I like more than this one. A couple come close. There might even be some ties. Some local Maine breweries put out some really nice Oktoberfests that have a slightly different character than this, but overall just the same experience of a nice fall beer. Crisp, refreshing, cool but not too cool, easy to drink, and just that hint of fall spices and smokiness. It's like I said, full on 5 out of 5 again for me. And I think honestly the fall pack, because they always put the Oktoberfest in there along with the Boston Lager, is probably the only variety pack from Sam Adams that consistently gives me at least 2 5 out of 5 beers. So I'm going to finish this up and move on to beer number 5. Alright, so we're up to beer number 5. This is the Sam Adams Black Lager. Now, the description says crisp and dark with hints of cocoa. It's the funniest thing. I was just in the comments section on an older video talking with a regular viewer, TJ. What's up, man? About the fall beer pack, and he said he just tried the Black Lager, and it reminded him a lot of a cup of black coffee. Almost indistinguishable for him from black coffee. So that brings up a couple of points. One, we're going to see what this tastes like for me, and I have some flavor notes from somebody else to compare it to. Two, this is not a big and popular channel, folks. If you hit me up in the comments section, I'll at least like it, I'll see it, and chances are pretty good I'll be able to respond to it because I'll have something to say in response. And, I like having conversations with you guys. So, TJ and other regular viewers, thanks very much for keeping things lively in the comments section and for tuning in every week. I really appreciate it. So, Black Lager. I actually did check in. I checked into my history on Untapped, and it told me two things. One, I've been using Untapped a hell of a lot longer than I thought I had been. And two, the last time I checked into the Sam Adams Black Lager was back in February of 2012. So, either I haven't had this in a while, or I didn't feel the need to check into it on Untapped. But either way, it's been a little while. Yeah, that is definitely a black lager. It's not quite dark, completely blackout dark like a stout. It's like a very, very dark porter color. And granted, I know the style's a black lager, so I'm not trying to compare it to the porters or the stouts, except in the fact that the color of a porter, this really closely matches that versus the color of a stout. I believe I've had some black lagers that actually wind up being as black as a stout. but it does have a tinge of brown to it. So it's not completely black, but it is a very, very dark lager. I do see what you mean about the coffee aroma. I'm getting very heavy hints of coffee in the aroma. Got a nice medium mouthfeel. Medium to medium heavy. That's pretty heavy. Hmm. That is interesting. I mean, I'm getting cocoa, like up front. I'm getting very roasted, toasty notes. Like just roasted malt, almost, almost burnt flavor. And it's that bitterness that comes out from the roasted malt. That's different from a hoppy bitterness. But there's that bitterness from the roasted malt. It gives me some cocoa about midway down on the palate, and I do see what you're talking about with the coffee notes coming up in the finish. That is, like you said, very much like a cold cup of black coffee. It's delicious. I wish they'd put the black lager in more packs. I think what it is that roasted bitterness that's very reminiscent of coffee, except in this case it's the malt, the grains, and then there's that little hint of cocoa midway down the palate, and then in the finish there are some coffee notes coming out. I do definitely see what you're talking about with the taste on that, and I agree. It's very much a coffee character for me versus the cocoa that they're talking about on the label. I mean, I am getting a hint of cocoa about midway down as I'm swallowing it, but for the most part, it's very reminiscent of a black cup of coffee, just gone cold. I'm not a big coffee fan, but I like iced coffee. I like coffee ice cream. I think for me, my coffee has to be um, tempered with some sweetness and some cream. And this reminds me a lot of a nice dark iced coffee. When I do break down and actually drink a cup of coffee, I like my coffee black. It, yeah, it, I can't explain it. It's like I prefer coffee ice cream to the actually drinking coffee. Pardon. Because of the sweetness, but when I do bring myself to drink coffee, I make myself drink it black. I think it's mostly because, it's like a beer. You know, you might if you're gonna drink coffee, you're gonna drink it, and you might as well man up and drink it the way it is, whether you like it or not. I'm like I said, I'm not a huge fan of coffee. I'd rather grab an energy drink, but that drinking that cup of black coffee, one, I know exactly what that coffee is supposed to taste like because I haven't watered it down with sweetness or cream or anything else, and two, I just feel more ballsy, man. I'm not going to excuse that. And this beer is giving me that same feeling. It's making me feel ballsy. Um, so it is very much like a cup of black coffee, except for that cocoa in the mid range there. It's got that nice medium to medium heavy mouthfeel, and it's making me feel ballsy. I gotta hit this one with a 4 out of 5. There's nothing about it that's really blowing me away or making me go wow, but I am really enjoying it. It could partly be a mental thing, but in terms of overall taste, it's good. It's great. It's a great beer experience. I'm just not ready to push it up to a 4.5 or a 5 because I'm not getting that wow factor, but definitely a highly above average beer for me. And again, a great experience. So I think I've spent enough time talking about it. I'm going to finish it off. We're going to move on to number 5, the Honey Rye Pale Ale. And TJ is telling me that it's actually his favorite new beer out of the pack, so I'm looking forward to it. And we'll find out if I was right lining it up on the last beer because of the hoppiness. But I gotta finish this one first. I'll be back for number 6. Alright, and now we are on the 6th and final beer in this variety pack. This is the Honey Rye Pale Ale. Lightly hopped with hints of honey and spice. And again, this is another one that I don't recall having had in the past, but I could be wrong about that. Lighter in color than the others so far. But again, the fact that it specifically mentions hops in the label, the fact that it is considered a pale ale, and actually that might be, I don't know, that might be around the same color as the Boston Lager. No, I think it's actually still lighter than the Boston Lager even. But the very fact that the IBUs are higher, and like I said, the hops are specifically mentioned on the label, makes me think this does belong at the end. Slightly effervescent, getting a really nice line of bubbles up from that cavitation point. Again, a clear beer. There are no cloudy ones in this entire pack. Oh yeah. There's some hops in that aroma. Citrus, which is like one of the two that I pick up on the most. I usually pick up on citrus and pine more than anything else. Just the way I'm wired, I guess. I'm actually getting some earthy notes underneath that, though. Interesting. A nice medium light mouthfeel. There's some sweetness there. And the sweetness does fade a bit to a, I wanted to see like a tea flavor at first, but then there's that upfront sweetness, and then there's like some earthy and floral notes coming through in the finish. Interesting. Pretty nice. That sweetness is different. It's very smooth, very crisp. Another really great fall beer. I think I gotta hit this with with a 4 out of 5. So this is another standout for me. Just that little bit of sweetness with the hop profile that follows up. I was getting a lot of citrus in the aroma, but I'm getting actually earthy and floral notes. Floral and earthy. Floral and earthy. Excuse me. I changed the order of the words there and repeated it because, oh, pardon. That's actually the order I'm getting the order of magnitude that I'm getting the flavors in. It doesn't appear to be all that effervescent, but it is bringing up a lot of belches, so it could just be catalyzing gas from the previous beers, but on its own it is I think making a lot of gassiness, so be aware this might make you burp a lot. It's pretty good. So yeah, another 4 out of 5 for me. So overall, just a really solid 12-pack. 6 really good beers. One I rated as average, one just slightly above average, but 2 5s and 2 4s. I mean, That's a good pack of beers. But, as always, that's just what I have to say about them. Other people might have the same opinion or different opinions. I think you should hit me up in the comments and the email link down below, just like TJ. Let me know what you have to say about the beers. I'd be more than happy to discuss them with you one way or the other, whether you agree or disagree. While you're down there, make sure to click on like and share, and make sure to subscribe as well. That way when you subscribe, you'll get a notification every time I post a new video. Till next time, thanks for tuning in. Cheers, folks. Now, a little while back, we did a bit of a comparison with the Not Your Father's Hard Root Beer review.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for the beer, man. So, highly recommended by you. The Extreme Beer Fest this weekend. We'll be able to get a hold of, I believe it's the American